At the end of this video, I do a gear shakedown, so if you came here for that, you can either watch through the end or skip ahead to the next chapter. As for those of you who came to see how the fishing is in Trout, Arrow, and Camas Lakes, check this out. On my never-ending quest to find the best fishing in Glacier National Park, this time I stumbled upon a walk-up permit to stay one night at the Backcountry site for Arrow Lake. There's no parking at the trailhead for Arrow Lake, so I parked at the lodge and had the option to hike a couple miles around Lake McDonald to the trailhead, or take the much more obvious option of floating across Lake McDonald, which gave me the opportunity to fish the head of the lake for lake trout, which I caught none. There are lake trout and cutthroat in Lake McDonald, but I've been skunked both times I've tried.
Ripe thimbleberries. They are delicious.
I really like thimbleberries, and lucky for me, this hillside, which has been exposed to the sunlight thanks to a natural fire a couple years ago, has been warmed up enough by July 6th that it was covered with ripe thimbleberries. Not just thimbleberries, there was huckleberries. I found a wild strawberry, wild raspberries,
rose hips, huckleberries, and just had some thimbleberries down there. Honey hole.
This next section was a little rough. Gaining 2,000 feet of elevation in direct sunlight over 2 miles with a 60-pound pack, we'll just say I was willing to yield the trail to anyone I came across, even though trail etiquette is you let the hiker coming up the hill have the right of way, since it's harder to stop and get started again.
Hey, sweetie. Come on through, sweetie. I ain't got all day. Let's go. Coming through or no? Alright. Tried to be polite. Thank you. Just coming down to Trout Lake. Started hiking about 8:30. It's now 10:45, so a little over 2 hours. And a mile left, so I'm going about a mile per hour. Pretty slow, but a lot of elevation. And also out of water, but feeling good. Figure my first break will be when I find a stream or at Trout Lake. Meanwhile, to get me through, quench the thirst, got little bushes that are just full of ripe huckleberries, baby. Just crushing huckleberries down the trail. It's like a drink of water every handful. Correction. That is actually Rogers Lake. That is Trout Lake. So I'm kind of curious about Rogers Lake. Maybe tomorrow I'll try fishing that. I can see from here it's pretty deep. I'm all geared up on the kayak. Trout Lake before noon. I'm sleeping on Arrow Lake tonight, 3.5 miles up that valley. Most of that I'll be paddling. And you can bet there's going to be a line in the water for all of that. Beautiful day. Let's check into Trout Lake's namesake, see if it lives up to it.
It did. It took me a little to get into them, but the foot usually isn't as good as the head, so it got better the closer I got to the head. And my strategy, as is usual, is just follow the shorelines, look for sheltered bays, look for structure along the shorelines, and might as well always have a line in the water. If I wasn't stopping to cast the shoreline for a little while, then I would be trolling while I traveled from one spot of the lake to the next.
A little bit of rain. Nice size cutty. Gonna put a tape on him. Say 13 and a half. Yeah, 13 and a half. Not a bad cutty. Guess it doesn't want to be measured. At 13 and a half. Yeah. 13 and a half. It's a good cutty. Make a mess. $11. Twelve and a half. Gotta say, Trout Lake did not disappoint. Lived up to its name. Caught dozens of cutthroat trout. Biggest one was 14 inches. Now I'm hiking between Trout Lake and Arrow Lake, which is my campsite tonight, Arrow Lake. Somewhere up there behind me. And I didn't pack this kayak in 7 miles not to try to fish it. I don't know that there are any fish there, but I'll check. In. Not a bad view for the night. Not a bad home for the night, is it? Maybe reinforce this tarp a little bit.
Even with catch and release, there is a certain mortality. It's relatively low, but sometimes you can't avoid the fish hooking themselves in the gill.
12.5.
Park biologists know this. If they were worried about it, they wouldn't allow fishing at all, but they do want to attract anglers to come and pay money to get into the park to fund their programs. And after all, the eagles gotta eat too.
Well, just so happens Arrow Lake has some pretty nice trout. Ooh, I'm gonna lose this guy. Slippery. Whoa, something big just jumped over there too. God, I want to measure him, but I'm afraid I'm gonna lose him. Alright, there we go. Big gutty. See if I can measure him. He is gone. He was 16. Oh, he's back. He's a long 16. Give him 16 and a half. Now he's gone. Swimming away, healthy as can be. 16 and a half. That's a good cutthroat. Arrow Lake, who would have thought? This tiny little lake. Oh. Wasn't expecting to find fish here. Didn't know. Turns out, some good cutthroat. Better cutthroat than Trout Lake. Should switch names. Good morning here from Arrow Lake, 7 miles deep in the backcountry. Pretty good trout here last night on Arrow Lake. Caught a 16 and a half inch cutthroat trout. Was surprised pleasantly. Didn't expect them to be that big. This lake's smaller than Trout Lake. So now tonight I stay at Mini Glacier. So you would think I would just spend more time fishing Arrow Lake here this morning and then head out. But Camas Lake is another 3.5 miles up the valley. And the park ranger that issued me the permit said there's good fishing there. He doesn't fish, so take that for what it's worth. He's going on hearsay. Maybe he had it wrong. Maybe he was thinking Arrow. But now he's got me wondering, how big are the fish in Camas Lake?
The trail was awful. Up to Camas Lake, it was so overgrown that you couldn't really see the trail. You would lose a lot of time if you did get off the trail just because the footing got terrible and you wanted to find the trail. You couldn't get lost because it was in the bottom of a valley next to a creek, but still far too much time spent bushwhacking and trail locating that it made it take a little longer than it should have.
I feel like this trail was meant more for horses than for humans. Oh well, my feet are already soaked from the wet brush. Should have been wearing my rain pants to start, but after the first 5 minutes it was too late to figure that one out. Well, I think I'm about 2/3 of the way, 2 miles in, a mile to go to Camas Lake. Truth be told, I don't know. My phone is dead. And right before it died, I checked one last look at Onyx at the trails and looked like a green mile as far as terrain treachery, a red mile, and then another green mile. So I hope I'm to the 3rd mile. Should be pretty flat the rest of the way. So far, Camas Lake is pretty small as expected, kind of shallow in a lot of places, but it does look like a deeper pool straight across over there, and there are little fish jumping, so time will tell if it was worth it. The fishing report so far in Camas is not good. There's trout in here, but so far they're all too small to get my lure in their mouth, so probably going to be headed back down to Arrow real soon, spend the rest of the day just fishing Arrow, looking for that 17-inch cutty. Oh, I stand corrected. Dang, that's not a bad cutthroat. Look at that. There are a couple fish in here worth fishing. Don't roll. Buddy, you want to get out alive or not? It's a good little, maybe 11 or 12. Look at that. All right. Maybe there are some decent fish in Camas. That made it more worth the hike already. I'm calling it. Didn't fish for real long. I think I might have caught the biggest fish in the lake, in Camas Lake, at 11-inch cutthroat trout. Caught a bunch of little tiny petery ones, but yeah, it was worth it. Now I don't have to wonder what was up here. Now I know. Back down to Arrow. I'm gonna fish the better part of the day. Leave myself just enough light to get back to the truck at Lake McDonald Lodge. Just headed back down to Arrow. Gonna take some wild onions with me. Oh, 'cause they're delicious.
This was the last footage before my GoPro died. Apparently I didn't bring a big enough power bank. I still want to finish the story for my personal memory archives, if nothing else, because when I got down to Arrow Lake, my short hour to fish, I had a giant cutthroat trout on the line. And I had caught 15s and 16s the night before. I could tell for reference this one in comparison was huge, maybe 19, 20 inches. I just wanted to get this fish into the net. I knew it was going to be the fish of the trip potentially, and as I reached out my net, that giant cutthroat spit out the trout that had my lure, and I watched him casually swim away. At this point I was wishing I had not gone to Camas and just fished Arrow the entire day, maybe would have caught that guy earlier in the morning, or if there was other trout that big, had I fished there all day, might have been able to find them. But I was only able to fish for an hour before I had to head back down. It was windy and I was hearing thunder rumble. When I got to Trout Lake, luckily I had a aggressive tailwind and I was able to just power paddle and get across that 2.5 mile paddle in record time. The hike up and over the ridge to get out to Lake McDonald was pretty awful, as expected. I was pretty beat. This was a pretty aggressive day, and the last hurrah was to get across Lake McDonald, pumping up my kayak after the sun had set. So it was getting dark as I crossed a pretty windy lake and negotiated some decent sized waves. I was pretty relieved to get back to my truck. And I still had to drive from the Lake McDonald Lodge all the way across the Going to the Sun Road and to Many Glacier. If you have ever been in the park, you know that was a pretty good hike, especially being pretty exhausted. That drive was awful, in the dark with on and off rain. I had to sleep in the truck once I got to Many Glacier anyways, because a grizzly bear had crashed a tent and gotten some food from some campers that fled just a few weeks ago, so tent camping was closed for Many Glacier. It's hard-sided only. And I don't know if I ever slept as good in that truck as I did that night.
So, what I have found to be the hardest part of this process is getting the kayak folded up into your pack. And what helps with that is letting it warm up in the sun. You'll find if you take it out of the cold water or early in the morning before the sun's up and it's cold, it's really stiff and hard to fold and roll up and get it in your pack. So this makes it go a little nicer. Careful of your inspection tag. If that rips off, you'll be headed back to the ranger station, AIS, Aquatic Invasive Species, to get your kayak inspected again. Be mindful of that. You may have a different kayak or raft and a different pack, so consider this just the baseline. This is what works for me. My kayak's 25 pounds. You can find much lighter pack rafts. I like it for the cargo options that it has, and it's only $100. The 10 pound, sub 10 pound pack rafts are $500 for the ones that I looked at. Gotta have your paddle, obviously. Put that in there with it. Personal flotation device is legally required. It has to be a wearable flotation device. This is probably a little kid's one. I like it because it's so small. I'm just really checking a box. I'm a pretty strong swimmer. Inflatable space maker for your feet. Gotta have that. And the seat, I can't use it as a seat. I'm too tall. My feet get wedged up into the kayak uncomfortably. I use this. I just inflate it and put it behind my back to kind of keep the kayak more rigid and give myself a backrest. I can sit there all day like that. For the backcountry trip, you don't really need this. If you want to cut weight, you can get rid of that. And I use my sleeping bag actually to put behind my back and keep the kayak rigid. The pump takes up a lot of space and it's real lightweight. I put it on the outside, put the tube inside so you don't lose that. And as you can see, I still got more space for tarp, hammock, whatever else I want to put in the top. Oh, don't forget the fin. Gotta have that or you'll be spinning like a top. I added my water because you know you're going to need that. I didn't fill the Camelback very full just because it's probably enough water to get in for the day. And then I've got my Catadine filter pump so that I can top off my water when I get there. This is one item. If you wanted to cut that and just plan on boiling water, I guess that's an option. If you got a way to make a fire or enough gas with your camp stove, I for one just bring a filter pump. I think it's a safety thing so you don't get dehydrated. So let's just look at that. My pack, kayak, and water. All that alone we're dealing with. Gotta stop moving. 35 pounds. So 35 pounds just for the boat and the essential water. So next we got the sleep kit. I think is about 5 pounds, so we'll go with the hammock. Eye mask, earplugs, luxury item. You don't need it. I just sleep a little better if I have it. Consider the head net part of the sleep kit because I will be sleeping in a hammock with a sleeping bag. Head net will keep the mosquitoes off my face all night. That's essential. Not to mention just hiking through the backcountry. That stays in my pocket if you're in the woods. Tarp. That's going to go in to keep you dry if it rains in lieu of a tent. Lightweight aluminum stakes. You could delete that if you wanted just to plan on tying the strings to the tarp and some rocks or trees. Plenty of paracord for the hammock and tarp for hanging that. Pillow, another luxury item. Sleep better if I have it. And my sleeping bag, we'll get to that later. We'll call that a sleep kit and see what that adds. Tear it again. So now with the sleep kit added, puts us up to, it's like 39.5 pounds. But 4 pounds for the sleep kit exactly. Now let's look at the electronics. And for the electronics, I'm going to bring a waterproof bag in case it rains. It's a lot of money right there in electronics. Or if the brush is wet and dewy, just brushing up against it will get stuff wet. If I tip the kayak, pop the kayak, drop this off the kayak, I'm well capable of doing that. Power bank, so I can charge some items. Small power bank, I'm planning on having everything charged up, only going in for a day. If I was going to be any longer or plan on using stuff, I'd have a bigger power bank. SLR camera, I got this little adapter so that can click into a clip on my pack or my monopod, you'll see that. Wide angle lens for tight shots, zoom lens for wildlife, GoPro Max 360 videos, Hero GoPro, shoots underwater, rechargeable lithium battery headlamp, extra battery and a charger for the SLR camera, waterproof pouch for my phone because I've dropped my phone in lakes before. And then that all goes in the waterproof bag. See how much that weighs. Got a re-tear. Electronics waterproof bag is 5.7 pounds. Set that aside. Talk about food. So I usually bring, well, if I'm going in for one night, looking at a lunch, dinner, breakfast, maybe another lunch, I do tortilla wraps with some food like tuna packs, oatmeal, coffee, some grains like quinoa, couscous, some treats. I don't have the tuna packs in here. I just put fish fry in there to simulate the weight. That's actually pretty lightweight if I'm talking about 4 meals. Call toilet paper part of the food kit. And then we have our cook kit. So pot, knife, fork, spoon, stove, gas, flint and a lighter to light the stove, soap and a sponge so you can clean it. You don't want to get giardia or anything else that's out there. Put all that together in a kit. We'll get that packed up. Put that in the top compartment. Pot in the top. Keep you in food. Got some more space in the top compartment, so we'll talk about fishing gear. Got a net and a telescoping fishing rod. If you want, you can have a basketball net, paracord, carabiner. You have an anchor if you put some rocks in it. Fingernail clippers for cutting the line if you want to save your teeth. Don't end up with chipped, serrated teeth like I have. Deeper sonar, luxury item. Nice to know your depth, or if it's a fish finder, connects to your phone. Just enough bait so that I can, I should say lures. Should be all that I need for a couple days fishing trout. 1 spinner is going to be plenty. Bring more if you're going to lose it, like me. Then tape measure, so you know if you've caught a record on the lake that no one's ever fished. Put all that fishing gear together in the head compartment as well. I put my telescoping rod in the net. Net goes on the outside of the pack. Bungee that in. Should hold just fine. Oh, yep. Not going anywhere, are you? Try that again. Bungee. Take my tether. Keeps me from dropping the net in the lake. Capable of that. Put that to the pack. That should hold it all together for the trip. I got my coffee mug. Take out this Wild Huckleberry craft lager from the Great Northern Brewing Company. Hopefully they'll sponsor me if I show them that. Coffee mug goes on. As far as the electronics go, I actually have a clip here for the SLR camera, as well as on my former monopod, that a little nicer to keep it on your hip, so walk up on a grizzly bear, you can take a shot before you take a shot at it. So put all that in there. Maybe not the best compartment for your expensive electronics, but it fits. No issues so far. You can figure out a better way if you want. This is a baseline system. You can figure out your own. You're probably going to have a different pack, different raft. Spend as much money, figure it out. This is just kind of showing you what's worked for me. Give you an idea what you're signing up for if you want to do a trip like these. So electronics are in. End of the sleeping kit would be the sleeping bag. So I put my sleeping bag in a garbage bag. Got to keep it dry. A wet sleeping bag is not going to work. Get hypothermia. So other ways to do this. This is a different compression sack than what I started with. And then you could also just wrap your tarp around your sleeping bag instead of having a trash bag. I don't mind having some extra plastic bags along if I got to keep wet stuff separated from dry stuff. Just an extra loose compression sack is just easier to get it in and cinch it tight. And I put that sleeping bag in my kayak in lieu of the seat, which I normally use as my backrest, like I mentioned. Getting close. Like I said, I usually take a trekking pole and can use it as a monopod too. There's that clip that the camera bracket goes into. Except on my hike coming down from Camas Lake, took a little crash trying to cross a river, stepping on a wet rock. I went down and broke my trekking pole. Lucky I didn't impale myself with it and broke that, which I can repurpose elsewhere. So that is no good. But I want credit for the weight that I carried, so I'm going to stick it on here. Bear spray. I would not go into grizzly bear country without it. However, you got to be 30 feet away for this to be effective at all if the bear is agitated or motivated to get your food. I don't know what to tell you. You might be SOL. And since I am by myself in the backcountry, grizzly bear country, with food on me and smelling like fish, I'm going to keep this pistol grip pump on my lap at all times. Bears can be messing with other hikers' shit, but they ain't going to be messing with mine. Put her on safety. Got a harness or a holster there that actually covers up so the hammer can't go forward. So that is chambered and ready to fire. It's illegal to fire, but if a grizzly bear is mauling me, I prefer that as a last resort instead of bear spray and prayers. That's just me. You do you. Alright, so let's see if I can lift this, what our final weigh-in would be. Get that on, tear it out. Keep the muzzle in a safe direction. Alec Baldwin. And make sure we're not touching anything. Final weigh-in is at It's not right. It says 48 pounds. I know it's more. Tear it out because it was at 9 pounds. We are at tear it at 0. See what our final weight is going to be. Get it off the ground. We're at 58.3 pounds. Just about 60 pounds, and that's without much food or water. And I forgot to mention the rain gear and merino wool hats. Got that in the accessible pouch. So gloves, hat, merino wool base layer, carrying it if I'm not already wearing it in the first place. And then rain gear is essential. I sleep in all of that because when you're sleeping in a hammock and off the ground, no insulation from the ground, you're getting cooled from both sides. I wear my rain gear on top of my merinos and my normal clothes. I wear one pair of clothes in, same pair of clothes out. If I'm just staying for the night, you can bring more clothes if you want, if you really want a 60 plus pound pack. But that is what I do. That is what works for me. 60 pounds, it's a pretty heavy pack, especially if you're doing 14.5 miles in a day with thousands of feet of elevation change. You're not going to have a good time if you do that in your first day without any preparation. I'll do some lighter days first, work my way up to that. And I've also just probably done some other active things or other trips leading up to this trip. So I'm pretty conditioned for all this. I'm dumb, I'm stupid. Don't have super light gear, don't like to spend a lot of money, stubborn, bullheaded, you name it. So it works for me. If you want to be dumb like me, feel free to try to replicate this system. Honestly, if you're going into the backcountry to fish some lakes that have some good fishing, getting out on the water instead of being limited fishing from shore, it's really a game changer. As you can see, check this out.